Now we'll hear from Miss Betty Davis, co-founder of the New Abolitionist Movement, member of Black is Back Coalition, and longtime community control public education advocate.
Thank you. It's good to see so many comrades that I haven't seen since maybe before COVID. And I want to salute those that are here because it was this wonderful band of comrades that helped to bring Sister Lynn Stewart, the people's lawyer, home. And I think one will never forget that. I just want to paraphrase a bit from a comrade whom our gracious President Obama saw fit to put, I think it was increase the bounty on her head. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. And it is this philosophy that is going to help the people of Gaza survive this horrific Holocaust. It is this philosophy that made Leonard Peltier raise his fist up and said, "You did not defeat me." And it is this philosophy that brings us here tonight, even though we don't necessarily all have the exact same philosophy. And I want to talk about philosophy from a different point of view tonight. Our warrior to the right of me touched on it when he mentioned Stokely Carmichael, because I am supposed to talk to you about a freedom struggle that many people don't know about in this country, and it was called Community Control of Public Education. And I was very surprised when I was asked to speak on it here, because this is an organization that supports workers and therefore supports unions. And under the leadership of Albert Shanker, the majority of the unions in this city came out against the struggle for freedom, the struggle for anti-colonial control over their public education. And I'm going to be all over the place. I would like to say it's because I'm old. I will just say it's because I'm lazy and I don't like homework. And many people in here are educators, so you can tell when a student didn't do all the homework the way they should have done. Okay, and it's something about her makes me very nervous. She's got all these rules. Trust him then a little bit more. However, one of the things that Malcolm X said was, education is the passport to the future. And tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. That sounds kind of corny today. He said something else. He said, "I'm for truth, no matter who tells it. I'm for justice, no matter who it is for or against. I'm a human being first and foremost. And as such, I'm for whoever and whatever benefits humanity as a whole." Now, I'm going to concretize that phrase for you, because to me, being for humanity no matter what means that when the uprising happened in Ferguson, it was some of the comrades in Palestine and elsewhere that sent a text message to these children who were fighting in the streets what to do about the tanks. I know Sarah will remember when Reverend Edward Pinckney came there. All he did was call for a recall of a black mayor that betrayed his promise, his election promise to the people. And they came to his house with a tank. And he served 3 years in jail for trying to remove a corrupt black mayor. I would risk the tanks if we could get rid of ours. However, I told you I digress. Yeah. The young warrior to my right also mentioned SNCC. And it is interesting about Stokely Carmichael or Kwame Ture. There's a wonderful essay that he wrote. And within that essay, he discussed the necessity for community control of education. Okay, I'm going to jump some more here. One of my favorite philosophers, whose name I cannot pronounce properly, Guterres, when he talks about liberation theology. Within that concept, he discusses also the issue of metaphysical imperialism. And so this is what I think Malcolm is saying when he talks about the importance of education. He says one of the first things I think young people, especially nowadays, should learn is how to see yourself and listen for yourself and think for yourself. Then you can come to an intelligent decision for yourself. If you form the habit of going by what you hear others say about someone or going by what others think about someone, instead of searching that thing out for yourself and seeing for yourself, you will be walking west when you think you're going east, and you will be walking east when you think you're going west. It's a continuous theme in Malcolm, the ability to analyze and read your world. Those of you who know your Paulo Freire, the liberation theology of Paulo Freire. Every time we move, every time we breathe, we are making a decision in terms of history. The purpose of a true educational system is to help you understand where you are on the planet at a particular time in history, and to understand that whether you do something or don't do something, you are making history. To me, that is what the purpose of education is. I'm not going to quibble about how many Leninists are on the head of a pen when it comes to correct communist theology or socialist theology. I don't have the time. I know who you are based on what you do. I know who you are based on whose side you are on when it comes to colonialism. If you and I fight over a particular chapter in Lenin, and I do love Lenin, I'm not going to go home and then never come back to your meeting. I may just be quiet so that we don't fight, so we can get the strategy straight about what we're going to do tomorrow morning when, as we say in this country, we go to meet the man. Okay, that's the issue. So having said that, I want to go on further in terms of why Malcolm felt education was so important. He says America's greatest crime against the Black man was not slavery or lynching, but that he was taught to wear a mask of self-hate and self-doubt. And this is what you fight when you fight against metaphysical imperialism. We all know that Cody says they'll have you thinking your friend is your enemy and your enemy is your friend. That's metaphysical imperialism. So everybody's up there loving Obama and I'm ready to vomit. And there were so many people in my block who just recently started talking because I had Cynthia McKinney's banner up when everybody else was voting for Obama. I didn't have too many choices. The point is this: the struggle within the African captive community, and that definition I got from Queen Mother Moore, is what Malcolm tried to wage. And I love the opening essay by my colleague here, because Monica is explaining that we all go through transformations. I mean, the last time you saw me, I wasn't this fat. And the last time you saw me, I didn't have this much gray hair. Transformation. That's what life is all about, transformation. Whether you want it or not, you don't sit still. Your brain, you either use it, you either put it to work, you make it ask questions, you challenge it, or you lose it. And when I can't find a word, it's not that I can't find that word. It's that I haven't been using that word for a while. And it's gone because I didn't use it. And if I didn't use it, everybody will tell you I've still got a little energy. It's because I didn't need it for the war I was fighting at that particular time. And this is what I loved about Malcolm. When he finally came out of the silence period that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had sentenced him to, because I think he said chickens come home to roost, and everybody clapped and danced when he said it because it was true. We know how many assassinations Kennedy was responsible for, especially in South America. I mean, state of siege all over the place. So maybe they do come home to roost. However, when he was allowed to speak, he couldn't stop. The words just kept tumbling out of his mouth. because that's the kind of energy, that's the kind of revolutionary fervor he had. And even if you can't remember Malcolm X's speech, there is something in his persona that you remember. And that persona is what we mean when we say it is your duty to struggle, it is your duty to win. You cannot let them convert and transform us into these beasts who would wipe out a whole nation. I couldn't believe how naive I was. I thought this was going to stop before it got to this point. And then I had to face the reality that capitalism can't stop. The same people that wiped out all the Mohicans, destroyed the Cherokee and the Cree, they are the same people who are destroying Gaza right now. I'm going to give you a statistic. When you think that you are not in a capitalist colonial empire, where I live, the people named it the Republic of Brooklyn. The Republic of Brooklyn was one of the first places that was a collaboration between white and black women to overthrow slavery, and they were successful. The Republic of Brooklyn. Okay, well, there used to be 200,000 Africans in the Republic of Brooklyn. This misleadership class person became the borough president. And then he became mayor. And within 20 years, 200,000 Africans are gone from the one area that I live in called Bed-Stuy. To me, that's my Gaza. I didn't know how much I was grieving until I saw a documentary on old Brooklyn. And it was all I could do to keep from collapsing in horror. And so I'm not going to say I understand what the people of Gaza are going through, but I want to know where our people went. And that's if just a fraction of that is what they're going through. Then this is why we fight colonialism. And this is why Malcolm could not stop talking when he was finally released from being censored. But who's going to release us? All right. When I grew up, they told me I lived in a ghetto. When I graduated from college and was introduced to Queen Mother Moore, she said, I wish people would stop using that term. She says, in a ghetto, you control every dollar that comes in. You control every dollar that goes out. You may be poor, but you control it. The way the mafia controls their territory. The way the Irish have been in the same community physically since the time they first stepped foot on American shores. They have been in that area of the United States. Nobody has gentrified them totally out of their territory. Nobody has moved them off their reservation. But they move us every time they want to. That's the colonialism, and that is why Harlem loved and worshiped Malcolm. He was their shining prince because he stood for them to have a homeland where they could rest and come home and not worry about 51 shots. They would not have to worry about fires. When I grew up, by the time I was 3 years old, every time I saw a fire engine, I would run and scream and hide. I associated fire engines with death because I grew up in a tenement where there were fires all the time, and I saw burning bodies jumping out of the window. So to some people, they hate the projects. I love the projects. I love NYCHA because I'm Farragut and I'm Farragut Projects and I'm proud of it. I was safe there. No fires every other night. That's capitalism. That's colonialism. It's very personal. It's not hard to figure out. If you don't know Lenin, you won't die if you know how to fight. And Malcolm had the language to teach people, it is your duty to struggle. It is your duty to win. And so I feel that we need to understand how we came to the point that we translated the concept of what Malcolm and the Panthers were talking about into a struggle against colonialism. We control nothing in our school system. I got my first job in a school in Harlem across the street from Harlem Hospital because Ralph Pointer said to me, I came to hear him speak at a union meeting for social workers. And I wanted to kill him by the time he finished because he said socialism in America is dead. They're going for a police state. They won't need social workers. They're going to put it all on computer. You'll go give them a check and write them up. And the whole concept of sociology, pardon me, is dead. They don't want to help families. They want to capture the children and put them in foster care. They don't want to help parents keep their families together. That's not sociology. They're out to criminalize families. When he finished speaking and I went up and criticized and talked to him, he says, what do you do? He says, no, you've got to become a teacher. We need somebody like you in front of our kids. And that's how I ended up in this school in Harlem, teaching in a Black school that had named itself the Henry Highland Garnett School. And you know Henry Highland Garnett said, let resistance be your motto. The parents had named it there. So then I studied the history of this school. This school, the parents refused when there was a strike to close their school. They said, this is the people's school. We will not honor the strike. Our teachers are coming to work. There is no reason for us to close. They are not going to strike against us. What is us? It was Ocean Hill, Brownsville. Those of you, and I'm jumping all over the place, this is quick history. Those of you who know the Ford Foundation, do your homework. It's a classic example of corporations and imperialism coming together. Can you spell or do you remember the name McBundy? The two McBundy boys. They were responsible for the hamlets in Vietnam, and McBundy and the Ford Foundation was responsible for the experimental school district in Ocean Hill, Brownsville. Since when do we need an experiment on democracy? How can you say people who've been captives all their life on this continent need an experiment on what it means to be free, to make your own decisions on behalf of your children with professionals working side by side with you in your community? Who needs an experiment on that? But the same people, the same corporation, Ford Foundation and the McBundy bastards, they were responsible for the hamlets in Vietnam. And so that same philosophy is what created the experimental district in Ocean Hill, Brownsville. And the people rebelled and they took their schools back and they demanded community control. Well, what is community control? First thing, the people want it with the workers. So the teachers, the parents, and the students are one. They have a constitution. They map out what their rights are. They map out what their responsibilities. Accountable children, accountable parents, accountable professionals. It's simple. It's not complicated. When the parents decided this is what they wanted at Ocean Hill, Brownsville, you saw more tanks, more cops, more traitors. Boy, did they pay off these bourgeois Negroes. The whole lot of them got very wealthy at our expense. And a lot of them were in the Democratic Party. And so instead of community control, we got something called decentralization. And the Democratic Party ran it. And all this corruption that they accused the education school districts of perpetuating were the Democratic Party hacks that they put in charge of us in these districts that they picked up. Sounds like Vietnam to me. And then, unfortunately, we didn't have any Vietnamese to shoot the mayors like they did in Vietnam. I digress. The point when we look at Malcolm is that he gave us hope. When you listened to Fred Hampton, you had hope. The young man mentioned the Panthers. Well, there were the Deacons of Defense before the Panthers, all right? And the Deacons of Defense were the template that the Panthers followed. And one of the things I liked about Lynn, those of you who know her, she read everything, she remembered everything. Oh God, what a memory she had. And one of the things she said very casually, and it just stopped me dead in my tracks. She said the whole time the Panthers were active, the statistics on police killings of young Black boys went down. That's all I had to hear. When people accused Malcolm of being for violence, I said to myself, I think he was there to keep us from being shot every 28 hours if we were under the age of 18 and Black and a male. Because the statistics prove the violence of what we call the army of occupation decreased. So I'm pointing out three things to you. Malcolm was a nice guy. Everybody who met him said that. The first time I heard Malcolm X speak, I was in a college with him, and he was speaking, and so many people were yelling and screaming and booing him. And he kept his cool. And before the end of that speech, everybody was listening and everybody was saying, oh, he wasn't about raving, ranting, and yelling and putting you down, but he had a passion in him to be free. That was his problem. Now, how do I know he really understood what it meant to be free? He is one of the few leaders that we have had in our culture that could flip the script on the white ruling class media. Everybody was saying, oh, the Negro problem, the Negro problem, the Negro problem. And Malcolm said, what do you mean the Negro problem? And this is one of my favorite quotes. Here we go again. If you stick a knife 9 inches into my back and pull it out 3 inches, that is not progress. If you pull it all the way out, that is not progress. Progress is healing the wound, and America hasn't even begun to pull out the knife. So how could you call it a Negro problem? He flipped the switch, and you haven't heard that word since Malcolm. You haven't heard that phrase since Malcolm. Genius. He understood, even though he probably never used the word metaphysical imperialism. Metaphysical imperialism. And we all know the story of the black doll and the white doll, and how the black children chose the white doll over and over again. That's not just a psychological video. My first year of teaching in the school that Ralph Pointer told me I had to go and put something back, I had first grade class. And you always have to have the children draw themselves the first day of school and name themselves. And every child in that school, in that class that I taught, refused to color in their faces. And when I got the brown crayon and tried to get them to color in their faces, some of them started to cry. So I dropped the lesson. And what I did was, there were those days, Black is Beautiful was everywhere. Again, we can thank Malcolm and SNCC and those people such as Ilambe Rath for that. And I got this beautiful picture of this little 2-year-old toddler, and she was Black, and she was chubby, and she was carrying a red, black, and green flag. And I put it on the wall, on the chalkboard, so that every morning when the class came in, she was there. And so the following day, I said, can you color in your faces? And they didn't want to. I said, so why don't you want to? They said, because Black is ugly. Somebody said it. And I said, what color is that baby? And they said, well, she's Black. And I said, you mean she's not supposed to be loved because she's Black? So when Malcolm is talking about this thing of education and how they can make you see your enemy as your friend and your friend as your enemy, that is the heart of metaphysical imperialism. Oppression can take you and totally make you into a non-thing. And this is why people like Paulo Freire and Malcolm X and Guterres, and also let's not forget Castro with his liberation theology. If you got to go to church, for goodness sake, don't paint Jesus white. So with that concept in mind, to this day, I still look to Malcolm when I'm very, very depressed. And I'm digressing again, we went into that school and we decided with the parents to support them, that they had the right to say their school would be open during the regular school original calendar and closed during the regular Easter calendar holiday. That was a revolutionary act. A colony follows the script and the timeline of the oppressor. Free people decide their holidays. Free people decide when they will go to work. So it was a revolutionary act. We were in that building. How did we get in? A worker suddenly lost his keys. Who was the worker that lost his keys? It was a Black custodian. We didn't have a Black custodian. It was 1960s, and there was no Black custodians in the school. Ralph went to put the first Black custodian with some parents who were from the Caribbean and had these fruit knives. They made it clear to the union, this is our custodian. He passed his test. He's been working here for 20 years. You mean he can't control people who have a mom? He can't be in charge. He can't get that salary. They refuse to listen to it. I know you think I'm crazy. We did not have a Black custodian. So you know darn well we didn't have Black teachers. Place was 95% Black and 100% white staff. That's insane. That's colonialism. So they were taking every penny from our community and giving us nothing because the reading scores were low and the kids were getting a social promotion. That means they promoted you and they didn't give you the test results that showed you failed the reading test. So the first time Ralph Pointer got fired is because he released the reading scores minus the names to the New York Times and it was published. And so everybody had to admit these people were not being accountable to the community. And it wasn't because the kids couldn't learn, because the minute they had to be accountable and the minute the parents had a voice in the school to get rid of the textbooks that were going back to the 1930s so that they could have textbooks like the white kids in a school just one district away, things changed. Reading scores went up. So it was not the children, it was colonialism. It was not the children, it was racism. It was not the children, it was oppression. And so this is what, to us, anti-colonialism meant. This, to us, was the validation of what Queen Mother said. But back to the keys that mysteriously let us open up the door, 2 o'clock in the morning, we closed the door, we locked the door. One member of our team was so nervous, he dropped the keys and we were locked in the school. But I digress. At 6 o'clock in the morning, when it was time to open up the building, we kept the building closed. What were we waiting for? We were waiting for the rest of the community to show up with their kids for school. When they showed up, because we had sent out flyers saying your school is not closed, your school is open, the community came. And when we opened the doors, the kids were lined up 5 people strong, waiting. When the police came and stepped in front of the gate, the children, the 6th grade, 5th grade children, climbed over the clocks, climbed over the fence, and came into the school. Well, that was it. But of course, when the police eventually entered the building, some of us were not kind to the cops, and Ralph ended up being arrested. But it didn't stop the struggle, because by then the Panthers came, and the Youth Against War and Fascism came. And when I was about to be snatched by a cop, this white girl, skinnier than her, stepped in front of me, and she punched this cop out, and then the next one punched her. She went flying in the air. That was the end of the struggle. That broke them. Because if they had to fight white people who were protecting Black people, that was too much, shall we say, education for the rest of the world. The struggle for community control of education was about taking the buildings. We did this all over the city. But if you read the story of Carmichael or Kwame Ture, he identifies what colonialism is and why you must have community control of schools. You must also, I hate to tell you, you need community control over your unions. Because if you had had community control over your unions, the South would have been unionized for real. And you would not be going through what we're going through now. The minute, what was his name, Walter Reuther, decided not to unionize the South, you could kiss the union movement goodbye. You need to have community control over your unions because you need a general strike. And if you don't get a general strike, you're going to lose your country. Thank you.